Welcome everyone to Already Cancelled. I am Pierre, that is Tara. We talk about TV shows here. The year is 2021 and the name of the show is Babylon 5. So full spoilers for the episode, which is season 3 episode 17. It's called War Without End Part 2. And we have multiple big things to talk about in this episode. And I think it's wonderful that the debate we had last episode about a certain character, what happens in this one. I had the biggest grin in my face during a scene in this one. And I suspect Tara had a giant grin in her face in a different scene. In fact, I also had a giant grin during that scene because the second something was mentioned and I could see where it was going, I just sort of smiled because I'm like, Tara's about to get her wish. Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of. Technicalities to talk about, but
I know, and I am upset about that.
That's okay. It's a little bit, yeah, but you know what's coming now, though. You know what's coming. Like all the teases, all you get.
I know.
That's
they have babies.
Well, they got one baby. One baby.
That was my wish.
They should have babies by now. Well, they get at least one confirmed baby. So, a lot of big stuff. Obviously, we ended last episode. Sheridan was jumping into the future, where we had Emperor Londo. We had the rest of the crew that went back in time to Babylon 4 on Babylon 4 station, starting their plan to attach the machinery to the core and set all that stuff up. And we get very, I'll just call it Back to the Future Part 2-esque, with intersecting with the previous episode. You look confused. Do you not know what I mean by that?
No, I know what you mean.
Okay. In the sense that we have our characters running around whilst the episode also plays out that happened before, and we just never realised that the other characters were running around in the background doing shit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Or like Trials and Tribulations from Deep Space Nine.
I've not seen the episode obviously yet because we're not at Deep Space Nine, but
you're gonna love it.
But on the extras on the Blu-ray for the original series, on the Tribbles disc, there was a feature about them using, like, integrating that episode into a Deep Space Nine episode. So I saw some clips, is what I'm saying. I saw some clips.
Yes.
I'm familiar with the concept of the episode. Anyway, so a lot of big stuff. Let's just talk about the future, because there's a good extended portion that takes place early in the episode in this future, and I like, there's so much here. The continued conversation with Londo. He mentions it's been 17 years, basically, since present day. Cool, we have a bit of a timeline. Nice enough. Basically says to Sheridan, next time I see you, you're doomed. Like, I'm going to kill you, you prick, for everything you did to my people. Blah, 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 blah. Sends him to his cell. But then they put someone else in his cell. Right, and there's a little tease in present day where Delenn says something like, "I just felt like someone walked over my ghost," or Grave, sorry, yes. And Delenn's in the cell with Sheridan, and this is the point where you kind of realize, because I don't think we actually got this impression last time, but in this episode, it's kind of made clear that when he's jumping into the future, he's effectively jumping into his own body, where he is there, like future Sheridan is there in that scenario. And he's just kind of taking over his own body in the future. That's what it seemed to me anyway.
I don't know if I got that, but sure, I believe it.
Yeah, I think I got just based on everything that happens with him and like him having to get out and so on and so on. I feel like he is physically still there, and it is like he was there. It's not like he teleported to the future last episode and he just happened to land in Londo's palace, and Londo was like, "Oh, this is a spot of luck." Sheridan just appeared in front of me. I
guess that makes sense. Yeah, he's supposed to be there.
He's already been, like, kidnapped or arrested or whatever. So that's cool. But yes. Delenn comes in, and obviously this is the future, right? So this relationship, whatever it's going to be, has already progressed much further than we've seen before. So Delenn comes in and she's like hugging him, and they're and the lighting's super dramatic. Yeah, she's like, "John, oh my love, I never thought I'd see you again."
She says, "I love you."
She does. She says that. She casually mentions our son is
David's
safe.
okay.
Yeah, the name came in a little bit later in the scene, but yeah, she mentions they've got a son, and Sheridan's like, son? Like, hold on a minute. And then he, like, when she finally, like, stops enough, like, sort of, like, stops motor mouthing a little bit, and he eventually goes, look, and he explains something. I'm not supposed to be here. And as he's explaining, you can kind of see that she kind of understands, and she's like, oh, wait, you've told me about this. You've told me that you saw, it's not clicked for her, like, as soon as she walked in the room, because it's like, well, they're clearly in a very stressful situation. She's not thinking like, oh, that moment John always talked about, get out of the future, that's coming up soon. Like, that's definitely happening in the next, like, hour or something.
And they make out.
And they kiss, yes. Yes, okay. Feelings, your thoughts, your feelings, your happiness.
Oh, okay, yes. I did, squee and clap my hands a lot. But I will say I'm a little disappointed that even though it's Sheridan's first kiss, it's not Delenn's first kiss technically here. And so I still have something else to look forward to.
I concur. I was thinking that this is Sheridan's first kiss, but not hers. Like, like present day Delenn still has to experience a kiss.
I
for
was
the first
hoping
time.
that they would still do it at the end of this episode. Like, come on. Like, you already know. Just go in for it. Just grab her by the waist. Pull her in.
I mean, how daunting is it to know, though, that you're going to be, like, having a kid with this person? You've not even had your first kiss yet. Like, how does he approach this? And obviously the feelings are there. We've seen these feelings been building. And
come on. It's been going on for so long.
But she does also get her own glimpse. She sees, like, it's not a kiss moment, but she has, like, this... And this is actually a nice callback
he's
to...
naked in her bed.
This is a nice callback to Babylon Squared, right? The episode, because in that episode, both Sinclair and Garibaldi had these flashes of different time periods, right? So this was happening. So it's kind of nice that as that episode's playing out on Babylon 4, because we're back in that time period with these distortions, that Delenn has a similar moment. And we don't have to explain it because it was happening in that episode. So yeah, it makes sense that it happens to one of our characters who are there now. But yeah, she sees, I think it's his quarters rather than hers.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I could be wrong, but
I just assume that they're sharing a bed.
they're sharing now, yes. But yeah, she's just standing up and looking lovingly as he sleeps in the bed. And I guess we'll just mention this scene properly now since we've brought it up. She has a little moment with the snow globe, and she's all tranquil and serene. But the door opens and we hear a woman's voice, and Delenn is so shocked by who this is, she drops the snow globe and it smashes.
Any ideas? I have no idea.
I did not recognize the voice. If anything, it sounded kind of like... I'm not saying it sounds robotic. I'm not saying it's a robot, right? Let me make that clear. But it sounded kind of... it reminded me of Tali almost from Mass Effect. And I know you don't get that reference, but almost like there's an effect on her voice.
I've not played those games.
Yeah, but it almost felt like there was a little kind of effect on her voice to me.
You think it could have just been like ADR?
Oh, it was definitely...
Just not done so well.
Nah, because I mean, I don't think you'd have an effect on it.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe she's just got a really specific sort of nasally voice, and it just kind of sounded like an effect. But it felt like it was slightly like she was talking through a computer filter, just a little bit.
Mm.
Yeah, I have no guesses. I haven't. But I mean, it's a cool tease. I mean, because this show is proven, and this episode especially proves it will get around to everything that teases. So
yeah, I can see why. I mean, obviously, I know it's a good show, so there's going to be fans out there. But I could see how, like, a fan base can really build off a show like this, because it would be such a rewarding rewatch. So, like, the more times you watch it, the more invested you are, and you love the show, and you love the characters more. And, like, the show keeps giving you something because everything's linked. Like, everything's relative. Or not relative. Relevant.
Not relative too. It's not,
sure.
Not an incorrect sentence. But, yeah. This is the thing where, like, TV shows always need to take time to kind of, like, earn your trust a little bit, right? It's always true. You always hope for the best, obviously. But this show has been gradually really earning trust since its early days, and I think a lot of this season 3 stuff is like not even the longest term stuff that you might be worried, and stuff that you thought we'd never get to.
We got a soul taker in this one. Was that the soul taker? Yeah. Soul taker.
Soul Hunter. But we got a clip from the episode he was already in. We didn't get a new one.
Yeah, but I'm saying like even that episode
Oh, sure, yeah.
has come back in the middle of season
when
3.
He said to Sinclair in the episode, they're using you. Yeah, that comes back up by the end. Yeah, but like so a simple little tease like this is like, okay, so this episode does tie off a lot of things, not everything. There's a lot of things this episode opens up, but this is like a new thing. Is this mystery of who this woman is who's coming to their quarters this late one night?
Ooh, maybe it's Delenn's other daughter from her previous life as a Minbar, and not some human Minbari hybrid. Maybe she has an evil sister.
I feel like you're just pulling things out your ass at this point, but
I'm just thinking of like soap opera plots.
Okay.
That my grandmother used to watch. She's got an evil twin sister who's been lost in a Minbari well.
Here's a question. So, are Delenn in present day? And technically, it's not present day, but you know what I mean. It's for in terms of the character, it's present day, right? Are Delenn in present day? She experiences this flash forward. The question I have for you: does our Delenn in present day know who this is, or is she just experiencing the shock because the future Delenn knows who this is, and it's a shock to her?
I think yes. I think it's someone that she knows now.
No, she already knows who this is. Okay. I have nothing further to add. I just thought it was an interesting question to point out.
Maybe she's actually a princess, and this is some courier that she recognizes who's come to take her back to the Minbari Crystal Castle, where she will be queen of Minbar. And Sheridan will be king. Just spitballing, I don't know.
I feel like at this point we've solidified a little bit more of the Minbari structure than all of a sudden there's a princess in a crystal castle.
Well, there's 3 of them. How about that? 3 castles for each sect.
Okay. But yeah, that's future stuff. So guard comes and takes them to Londo. And Londo, made it pretty clear the next time he sees them, he's going to kill them. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the first shot we see of Londo in this scene, where it's a close-up of his hand dropping the goblet, I'm pretty sure we saw that in one of the teases of this, in some of the teases of his future at the ending. I think we saw that shot. Know. Yeah, I think we saw him dropping this goblet, which would imply to me that not only is this going to pay off a lot of stuff at this section that we've teased in season 1, that even that moment, and even like what this moment is going to lead into in the scene itself, was also always part of the plan, which is. So we had a debate last episode about, could there ever be redemption for Londo, and would he ever see the error of his ways, and would he ever want redemption? Not only does this give it to us on a silver platter, he even says the word. He even says his redemption. And I had the biggest grin on my face because this felt so rewarding to have this moment. Because effectively what this scene was, it was like a scene in a spy movie where you think someone's a bad guy, but then they're able to put like a signal jammer on or something to stop like all the people listening so they can finally talk like real and be who they are for real for a minute. That's effectively what this was, but it's using something that is interesting because we had an episode not too long ago that introduced a concept into this show where there were life forms that would take over other life forms, right? I don't know if parasite's the right word, and it wasn't like a negative thing in that episode. They turned out to be quite nice creatures, and like the people who were taken over were quite happy with it. But clearly Londo has something inside him that is akin to a species like that, if not the exact same species. Now, it could be a different type. Could be, we'll learn more about this, I'm sure.
Maybe it's something the shadows can do
as time goes on. I don't think so. It feels separate to them. Especially since we specifically introduced this whole concept in another episode. And especially since, because the shadows taking control of Centauri Prime, and Londo's displeasure. That's a weird word to use. His displeasure at that, but Londo's attitude towards that. That feels like a separate thing to me, where that whatever's inside him that wants Sheridan dead, because that's, you know, like, he's basically, I love this as well, that Londo's like drinking problem has finally turned into like a superpower, because it turns out that this thing inside him will go to sleep if he gets drunk enough, and he can
Can't
take
hold
control.
his liquor.
Great detail, great touch.
But Londo's had much practice.
I think what's so neat about this scene is that as soon as he starts talking about the thing inside him, he starts about he can't hold its liquor. Like, I think that it's got one of those great things where you kind of start to slowly see where it's going. Like, you're kind of aware he's about to make a face turn. You're aware that he's about to say something good, that he's not just like, I want you dead, Sheridan, and I hate you, and I hate everything, and, you know, I'm going to destroy the universe. Like, you kind of feel that it's going to a better place. And sure enough, he asks Sheridan to help his people. He can't do anything else for them. Ask both of them. He says he's got a ship ready. You can sneak off. And he says,
save my people.
Save my people. If it's the one thing you can do, please do it. He doesn't hold resentment. He recognizes Sheridan and Delenn as his true hope. His one last hope of some kind of redemption in this act. And so I think it's a combination of two things. It's one that he just has like a noble goal here, but also admitting that he does need redemption. Like, those are the two sort of like kind of like positive spins to Londo in this scene. But and that's before we get to the second part of it with the other character. We'll save that for a minute. But thoughts on this concept so far, than what he's revealed.
Yeah, I mean, we've been waiting for his redemption arc. I guess it comes 17 years later, after he's already failed at everything. But hey, better late than never.
For sure. And one of the things we glossed over actually in the scene with Delenn in the cell is that when Sheridan explains when he's from, and she sort of starts to like give him some like hints and tips for the future, and they talk about winning the war, and he's like, but it doesn't sound like we won completely. It sounds like, and she's like, well, no, we can never win completely. It sounds like the world, you know, just in general, it doesn't, not just like Centauri Prime, it sounds like things aren't too nice after the war's won. It sounds like the future is pretty grim. And she says that the alternative of losing the war or giving into the shadows is even worse. So you can't do that, which makes me think that there's still a chance that like Sheridan's going to somehow pull out a victory that is better than what came originally. Like, he's still going to change the future. It still feels that we're aiming for that to me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that could I think so also, especially with what comes next, with the character that shows up and ultimately a prophecy is fulfilled here. I wonder if that is because it's been fulfilled in this timeline, that if there's a different timeline now where a different future happens, that's no longer like the prophecy.
Well, I mean, the prophecies right from season 1 were always told us that there were a possible future. Like, you know, the Centauri, you know, seer, you know, at the end of Signs Importance, like, she, you know, when she's
you mean the episode with Lord Kiro?
Yes, that's the one. When she talked about the ship, the station exploding, she said this is a possible future, and like your choices could change it. So I feel like everything we're seeing with this future, like, it feels like it is preventable, because, you know, that gives us a goal for the show. Especially, like, it'd be one thing if it's just, okay, Centauri Prime gets effed, and maybe they have to try and figure out a way to save them in the future. And maybe we'd get another episode where we somehow see the future again. So, I mean, we saw enough of it in this one. Maybe we'd get another episode like that in a future season or whatever. But because it makes it very clear that it's not really good for any of the characters, because, you know, Delenn and like, they're talking about, oh, David's safe, but that implies that there's a lot of things that aren't safe.
There's still a lot of danger.
Yeah, there's a lot of danger. Things aren't too shabby. But
the danger isn't the
shabby.
shadows anymore. So it's just maybe the conflicts that were brought up because of this war, and something else went wrong.
Yeah, well, it maybe depends, because I mean, the shadows are definitely the threat on Centauri Prime itself.
Or maybe the war itself just is so devastating, and there's so many lives lost that people just can't recover.
Yeah,
and other species are taking advantage or something like that. Yeah,
including maybe whatever's taken over Londo. This, you know, parasite style. I can't remember what they were called, but you remember the episode that introduced these types of life form. Like, maybe that's
It was like the old man, but he wanted like the
Yeah.
homeless guy on the station,
Well-
but he actually wanted it because it made him better.
which is what's interesting about this being introduced here as a very villainous presence that's controlling Londo, is that the previous examples we had of a life form like this were not like, unless they were really, really good at lying, and unless we get like a swerve, it did seem like, no, everyone who was taken over was happy they were taken over and had like a nice symbiotic. Really, we compared it a lot to the race in Star Trek,
The Trill.
the Trill, yeah. It felt a lot like that. So it's just an interesting idea that there is a more villainous version of that type of life form.
Not everybody in the same species is alike, so there could
true.
just be
Yeah.
like villainous versions of the species but they're part of the same.
yeah, it's like the modern version of
Yes.
of one of these things. Yeah.
Like, wait a second, we could really use this to our advantage if we just like take over powerful people throughout the galaxy.
Super, and I think it's interesting because it's not even like Londo's that powerful to take. I mean, sure, he's the emperor, but Centauri Prime's not exactly at a place of like any strength right now. So I think it's interesting that it kind of feels like Londo might have just been the Thing's only choice or his best choice, or like, you know, what circumstances led to Londo being taken over.
I mean, that's why I was thinking maybe it was just the shadows, like something they can do. But if they could do that, then why wouldn't they just always be taking over bodies?
They'd have been doing that all the whole time, probably, if they could.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a case of maybe they took over Londo before things were like this, so it was like Londo was a better target. He was more tempting.
Maybe it's dormant. Maybe it's been there the whole time.
Joe, I had a feeling you were going to suggest that maybe he's already had this thing in him the whole time. I don't think so. Would be my guess.
Wait, you had a feeling? You had a prophecy about this episode? That I didn't think about that till just now.
I don't know. I had a feeling you were going to suggest that maybe he always had it.
Maybe.
I don't.
Maybe it's like the poison thing, where like someone put in a dose, but then it needed to be activated to work.
That could have been a foreshadowing. I don't know. I would say that I don't think so, but I won't rule it out either. Like, it's entirely possible that it's. But I think the reason why I don't think so is because effectively we get to hear this more like remorseful Londo who kind of accepts what his part was, and he clearly is a lot more regretful, and so on and so on. I think the idea that he was like manipulated at all before this, that, you know, in the present day timeline where he made all these bad choices, I think that would cheapen that. So I think it makes more sense that he doesn't have any influence like that inside him.
Yeah, or it's just some sort of representation of the evil that was already in him. Because like not everybody's good or bad, right? We're all shades of gray.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there's a little nugget in there that was, you know, worked at by an evil force that caused it to grow, and that's the side that you feed, right? So that's the side that grows and gets stronger. Are
you suggesting that this is like a sentient tumor that is formed inside him because of all the
why not
malicious...
have some sort of like representation of the evil? Like, he's the Jekyll and Hyde. That's the Hyde coming out. He can only control it. Like, only the good parts of Londo now come out when he's totally inebriated. Then he can allow for emotions. But when everyone sees him, he's stern and evil. You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to freaking finish this because.
Okay, finish.
You never let me interrupt.
I've got 2 points. I've got 2 points I want to make on what you've just said.
Yeah, I see your fingers.
Feel free.
Peace to you as well.
Yes.
Whatever. Go ahead.
Okay. This is all fun speculation, but I think it's all a little moot because we had an episode that introduced the species, which he is kind of describing in this scene. I don't think that episode
There can be allegories in a science fiction show.
I'm not disputing that there can't be allegory. I'm just saying it can still be a metaphor, but I'm saying it can't. I'm just arguing against that it grew like a tumor, like I joked when you were, putting forth the hypothesis, right? The other point I would make is that in terms of a metaphor, though, I do think there is something to be said here about the idea, and maybe this is like a backward way of thinking about this. Maybe I'm off base on this, but
Yes.
the idea that, as someone who has drank a lot, right? The idea that he only becomes himself once he's had enough to drink, because the way he phrases it, if I have just enough to drink, it'll go to sleep and I can be myself again. Like, that almost sounded to me like someone who's an alcoholic talking about, like, becoming, like satisfying the thirst so they're themselves again for, like, a moment in time before the thirst comes back. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, I don't know, but I kind of heard that a little bit as he was talking about it.
Yeah, there's a really great South Park episode about it. It's basically making fun of the Matrix, where suddenly, like, one of the kids sees all the movies and all the movies look like shit. But, like, it looks like two poops talking to each other, making Adam Sandler jokes. And then all the music he listens to sounds like shit. He just hears, like, farts and stuff. He doesn't actually hear the music. And everyone's like, no, it's great, man. Why can't you see it? Why can't you hear it? He's like, I don't know. And then Morpheus comes to him and tells him to, instead of taking the red pill, to just drink a bottle of whiskey, and everything sounds great again.
I was not expecting such a South Park tangent.
It's a really smart episode. It's very
I
clever.
don't think you were a South Park person.
There's a few years that I was a South Park person. Totally.
Okay.
I haven't watched it in a long time, not because I don't think it's good. It's just, I don't know. I've missed it.
All right. I mean, it's better than you bringing up Lord of the Rings, I'm going to be honest, so I'm it's fine. So
Oh, are you anti-South Park?
I'm not anti-South Park. I just don't really have any attachment to South Park.
Okay.
I saw a few episodes as a kid, and was there.
Well, I mean, I didn't like it when I first saw it, but man, it got good.
So we have to talk about the other half of this future stuff. Oh, obviously there's a little scene with Delenn and Sheridan as she says goodbye, and he's like getting the cramps, and he's like, I'm going back to the past. But the big scene is, because obviously as soon as we saw this future Londo, we're like, this looks like Londo in that prophecy about his death, about the strangling. So not only do we actually get a payoff to that, where G'Kar with the eye patch walks out from behind the curtain, we get a swerve in context. There is context for the strangling. This is not a Londo and G'Kar strangling each other because they still hate each other as much as they did. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure nothing's healed like what Londo did to the Narn population.
He calls him his old friend, though.
Yeah, but I mean, Garibaldi would start a lot of sentences. He's like, my old friend, Sinclair. He says that to everyone. It's kind of his thing. I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe they do form something. But I do get the feeling that there was always like one day G'Kar has to take some kind of vengeance for what he did, because it was that monstrous, right? That's not forgotten. But the context of the strangling is not just, G'Kar's acting out in a moment of rage and they hate each other. This is... No. This thing's about to wake up. My alcohol is about to wear off. And if it wakes up, it'll warn the others, and Sheridan and Delenn, who I am trusting to go and save the universe, are not going to get away. I have to be killed before it can wake up. That's the context of this. He wants G'Kar to do it. And G'Kar, starts strangling him. And Londo only strangles back. The prophecy was we're strangling each other, but Londo only strangles back once it's not Londo anymore. That's what he never could see. When he saw this in the future, when he saw his dream of him and G'Kar, he never knew that part of it. So it adds this extra little twist where he's effectively sacrificing himself to make sure that Sheridan and Delenn get out okay. So it's like... And it's funny because last episode we were saying, like, how can, Londo's at such a low depth in terms of how far he's sunk, he's done all these awful things, like, how can we possibly have a sign that there's a chance of redemption? And then in comes this episode, and just...
Oh yeah, by the way, it's the next episode.
I am sure people who have seen the show and were watching our last discussion were cackling as that debate was happening. I can't, I mean, obviously there's a lot of great stuff in this episode. There's, like, other things to talk about. There's good stuff set up for the future. This is, like, the previous scene with Delenn and Sinclair, Delenn and Sheridan with Londo, and then this scene with Londo and G'Kar. This is, like, probably the most rewarding single sequence of the show so far. This felt so good. Having this not only kind of gotten to in a way that you didn't expect it to, because now we have like more like direct time travel happening, but also because like there's such a different context added to it that feels very special, and like it makes me want to root for Londo again. And it's like, oh my god, what's going to make him finally realize in present day? When is this turn towards this? And even if it happens before the war's over, which it might not, but like you're kind of going to look for it now. You're going to like be looking for the seeds of him thinking better and things like that.
Yeah. Remember when G'Kar,
Yes.
when G'Kar was talking about his father hanging, and he hanged for like 5 days or something,
several days,
before he died. And I was thinking, like, during this scene, like, to strangle a Narn must take a lot of strength. So maybe he has to have this, whatever this thing is inside of it, in order to be able to do it.
That's true, because they both die, yeah, seemingly. Yeah, we see them both lying there. That's true.
Because they got some strong necks.
Yeah.
Also, impractical eye patch design, but it does look cool.
It feels like just a bit of like random material he's wrapped around his head, which I think is the point. It's meant to feel kind of future dystopian resistance kind of thing. But yeah, I dug all that. Of course, because obviously, you know, we see Londo, right, last episode. We see him again in this episode, and I'm thinking through it, like, and we even questioned, is this pre-Veer being Emperor? Is this post-Veer? And I think it makes it very clear at the end that this is pre, because Veer comes in and like sees them both lying there dead, and
picks up the crown or whatever he wears.
Maybe I'm wrong, but the look in his face told me he didn't have a thing inside him. But that's just purely based on his look.
I don't know. I don't know what this thing is. If it's only in one or if it's in many.
No, I think it's only in one, but like there could be more than one though. Like, you know, because we know there's multiples of these from before.
I like that he's just waiting in the shadows for him to die.
I think he was out to lunch.
Turn.
He was out to lunch. He came back. He found them lying there.
Okay, President Clark. Is that old strategy, huh?
Yeah, I was looking at his face. It felt like it was this sort of oh my god, the responsibility that I've just like inherited.
I know, what have I inherited?
That's what it looked like to me on his face, which has made me think he wasn't like, you know, possessed, for lack of a better word, with a symbiote. So, but you know, I could be wrong. Like, I'm making a quick snap call based on one look on the actor's face.
Plus, Veer doesn't have an evil bone in his body, so
that's true. He looked quite spiffy. He had like a nice, like, smarter outfit on. He looked like he definitely was a bit more aged in his experience.
Although I did look it up, the actors are only 4 years apart in age.
That doesn't shock me. Especially since Londo. And obviously in this episode he's made to look really old, but I feel like Londo's presented as being older, you know.
Yeah. But in reality, like, I remember watching, I watched reruns of the show, but like St. Elsewhere and stuff, and it had not Peter Jurassic, but Stephen First in it. And he was already like in his 20s there.
Yeah, I guess some people just have a stat. The way he like sort of hands his shoulders, the way he's sort of nervous, he comes across as quite young and inexperienced. You know, at least up until recently, anyway, in the show.
It's all about the attitude.
Yeah, so he comes across as.
That's why I come across so young. When in reality, I know.
No comment. No comment. Yes. This food just was fantastic. Just to wrap it up, I just want to emphasize that again. Fantastic. So, but I mean, do you want to talk about the ending or go through the sort of the bulk episode ship stuff first?
I guess the bulk stuff. Let's go in order. I mean, this is pretty much the first part of the episode anyway, what we just talked about.
Yeah, for the most part. There's like a couple. It cuts to the ship, of course, or the station, I should say, a few times while they're doing, you know, like Cole, like, Batman's out of a scene at one point because some security.
He had intuition.
Yeah, almost grabs Yvonne.
Things were going too well.
We play a really interesting game of who's in the blue suit, so there's a moment where I'm like, oh shit, when the blue suit phased into Babylon Squared, it was Sheridan the whole time, and then it swerves us again, and it turns out, no, it was Delenn, because she swapped places with Sheridan. I'm like, damn it. They're all over the place with this. But it was fun. It was fun seeing that stuff intersect. You know, we see Zathras, he's trying to fix the device, he gets arrested, and then we see some of the scenes play out from Babylon Squared, but then he actually runs up to the one who's phasing. He's like, hey, like, I fixed it.
I fixed the thing. Here you go.
Yeah, so they kind of bounce it around, and it does have that Back to the Future 2 quality of but with more reveals of like what's really going on, because there was so much that was shrouded in mystery at the time. And yeah, part of me was thinking as I was watching when the blue suit phased in, when they made Babylon Squared, that episode, like, was that just supposed to be Sinclair at the time? And
I imagine so.
It probably was, but like, I think they did a really good job of making it really interesting and like convoluted, but I mean convoluted in a good way.
Especially since like the people in the comments for the last episode did mention that this was supposed to be Sinclair's send off if he would stick with the show, and this would have been like the last story for him to tell, which makes sense given where it goes. And it also makes sense that maybe he would have taken Delenn with him, that she would have gone to, because maybe they would have had like a love story.
Maybe. Oh, that's a bit weird given something that comes up at the end. I'll talk about it. Well, I think all the stuff intersecting with the previous episode is just kind of good fun, and it all kind of clicks together. There's little moments I think that are worth pointing out here or there. I like that they got the actor back who was the one in command.
Yeah, and I like the brown suit. I don't know why. I think maybe it reminds me of like the World War I uniforms versus like World War II uniforms.
Oh, sure.
So I'm like, oh yeah, he's the older one. So this is the one from before. So it's more World War I-y.
Also B4.
Yes, okay, yeah.
But yeah, I like that. You know, there's a little moment where Sheridan comes back briefly for a bit, and he gets to talk to Delenn, and she's excited to see him. She's like, "Oh my God, John, you're okay. Thank you. Praise Delenn." More on that later. And he's like, "Oh, there's a lot to tell you, but I'll do it later." It's a lot to
just
process.
do it now. Just kiss her.
It's a lot to process. We have to get things going. And they kind of like they tie up some. No, it wasn't even necessarily things that needed to be explained, but we find out that all the disturbances that made the crew evacuate it was actually Ivanova who was doing all that to make them leave. I was like, no, we need to get rid of them. They didn't want to leave. And the other character, Sinclair and Garibaldi from the past arrive, and they're going around. So it all was a nice little jigsaw puzzle of like fitting together.
It was nice to have Garibaldi here, even though he wasn't really here.
Yes.
Which I thought he was going to go, but I guess, yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things, is that Sinclair ages, like, because obviously he looked old in the end of Babylon Squared, and we get kind of an explanation for that. And I wonder if this was like the original plan. Like, was he meant to just be older, or did they need to like do something to make it work? So they just sort of came up with this. The time field. But then again, they did set up that previous character at the start of that episode that did age. So it was there, to be fair. It was kind of seeded. So I mean,
did you watch Babylon Squared again?
No,
I didn't either. I said I would, but I forgot.
No. I just remember that particular point. I'm sure there's things I've forgotten about it, but you see,
there's so much of the episode in this one anyway.
Yeah, you see enough of it in this one. I felt quite good about it. So. Yeah, I guess the big stuff really is as we get towards the end of the story, and they've kind of succeeded. We find out that this is a one-way trip and that someone has to pilot it back, and Sinclair was kind of always intending on doing it. And is this true? And now that he's been cut out, he doesn't lie, he doesn't bother. He's just like, yeah, this has always been the case, and I have to do it. And they try to argue with him, but he's like, no, it's me. I've always done it. I'm always going to do it. And
here's my note.
we find out about the letter, and the letter was him writing to himself and Delenn, explaining that he's going to do this, and this all works. It's all really neat. Zathras explains what he means by the one, and he talks about how all three of them, because he gets rid of Cole and Ivanova. He's like, no, you three are the one who was, the one who is, and the one who will be. I can hear Bret Hart's theme playing in my head. I know you don't get that reference, but
I know he's a wrestler.
He is. His catchphrase was "the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be," which is why I was thinking of Bret Hart during this section. But he talks about how Sinclair is the beginning of the story, which definitely makes sense given where this episode's about to end. And then that Delenn is the middle of the story, and at the end of the story is Sheridan, which made me feel like, yeah, we're talking about like possibly changing the future. That maybe the end of this story is that Sheridan is going to find a way to somehow get a better outcome that isn't defeat shadows and live in misery, or lose to the shadows and live in misery, or possibly just die. More likely just die. But so it felt like it was really setting up that Sheridan's choices are the ones that are going to be like the important, like, game-changing things for the remainder of the story. Because Delenn has been so important about orchestrating things throughout the present day part of the show since the start of it, with Sinclair, with everything going on, with introducing these ideas to these characters. But Sheridan's ultimately going to be the one who's going to end this story. And the line that also stuck out to me was, you will finish this story, and the three of you will help build the next great story, which kind of felt like, and I think that's the part to me that kind of sounded like, oh, there's going to be like a fresh start after this. I don't think that's what he was getting at necessarily. Or the reboot for that matter. Although maybe depending on what it means by the next great story, maybe like the reboot will somehow take that and turn it into like this is an alternate reality that was created by the original show. So
maybe
like maybe they're
GMS, gonna Kelvin timeline it.
Yeah, maybe they'll do something. maybe it'll just fit perfectly with it. I don't know, but I think it was that line in particular that really made me think that there's somehow going to change the future. That what we're seeing in the future isn't the next story, right?
Yeah.
It's part of this story before it can be changed, but it's not the end of the story. But I could be wrong. I don't know. That was just like these were all these seeds that were being planted. But it was all nice. There was little touches I liked in the storytelling here, like the awkward silence as they're all back in the White Star before Sheridan like says, lift the clamps.
We gotta go.
Yeah. I liked it when the ships from season 1 arrived. There was like a version of the old main theme played a little bit as they were arriving.
I noticed.
Little nice touch. I always appreciate that. So all these good things. But one of the things that this episode does make a good point of doing is that it reminds us of Delenn in the middle of the episode, because Cole and Valen, talk about it and talk about how it's a Minbari, not Barnum and Barry, and talk about started the Grey Council, all that stuff. And I'm going to have not a negative point here necessarily, but I'm going to say something that's less glowingly positive than I have been about the rest of this episode.
Go on.
Is that I think this ending and the reveal of Sinclair at the end here, I think is nice, and it fits with everything the show's set up, and it makes complete sense. But I don't think it's as impressive as the other things that happen in this episode. And I think part of the reason why it's not as impressive to me, and it's not the show's fault necessarily. Part of it's just because I've seen other shows, I've seen movies as well, but certainly other long-running shows where they pull the trick that someone we've been hearing about from the past turns out to be someone in our main story present day. Someone goes back in time and becomes something important in the past. I've seen that done enough, I think, that this felt less like a shock and more like we're doing that. We're doing this. I don't want to say trope. That feels a bit harsh, but we're doing this story mechanic, and that's fine. But it didn't fill me with the rush of excitement that all the Londo talking about the future and like wanting redemption, or his and G'Kar stuff, or even the teases of Delenn and Sheridan's relationship. Like that stuff was exciting because that was like super advancing story, character swerves where there's growth and there's stuff to be excited about. And if this was originally going to be the ending of the show, whether it happened now or happened later when they had to just go full circle with Sinclair, had he stuck around, I think I'm glad this isn't the final ending of the show. I think this is a great end of this two-parter, and it wraps up his story wonderfully. But I am glad that this is not the final point of the whole show.
Okay. I really love the ending for Sinclair and the whole reveal that he is Valen. I think mostly because I'm pretty sure I predicted that his soul was Valen's soul at one point.
I think you did say that at one point. Maybe that was also part of it. Maybe it's because you kind of planted that seed so long ago that I just wasn't that. I was like, oh, this feels like, yeah.
Well, I was like, okay, well, we know that they share souls. Clearly, like, he's somebody important to Minbar. That's why, like, they stopped everything.
Yeah, that's why they stopped the war. That's why they, everything.
So, feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah, so they do the thing where, like, Delenn kind of starts to explain effectively what they learned about him, and, like, you know, that process I went through where I changed it was to rebalance things.
Yeah.
And this is what I meant earlier when I said
he reversed the chrysalis.
This
You
is
just
what,
built it backwards.
This is what I meant earlier when I said that it's a bit weird that if you thought there was going to be a romance if they went back together, because I kind of took this as she was basically accepting the human part of him that he had given up back in the past. Because of course, you know, he becomes a Minbari. He transforms the same way she did, but he transforms the other way, obviously. And it's because 1,000 years ago, they'd never met a human. Like, the Minbari would not have accepted, like, this mysterious station appears and there's a human on board. Well, it's a human. Look, who is this asshole? So in order to convince them to, like, accept him, he had to be Minbari. And probably
he's got two cautious with him.
You mean two Vorlons?
Yes.
But that was the more exciting thing for me, was the fact that there was two Vorlons. Like, the idea that the Vorlons showed up before the Minbari did and were like, okay, we're going to help you do this. Like, we're going to help you convince them.
They knew.
Yeah,
they knew they needed to be there.
So we get this glorious shot of Minbari Sinclair with two Vorlon angels. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the Tasha Yar send off that he deserved. It's a little Yesterday's Enterprise, just a skosh.
A little bit. Would you be upset if I said it was better?
No.
It was better.
Do you not like that episode?
I do like that episode. I just think this was a better episode.
No, they're not really competing, are they? Because they're both great.
I think this one, because it has so much good payoff and so much, like, because this show is so much more serialized, I think that there's an inherent advantage to this.
Yeah, I mean, Yesterday's Enterprise is one of the most serialized things that Next Generation really ever did, because they didn't really have a serialized formula.
Yeah.
There's inevitably going to be way more payoff.
Of course. I think if you want to compete some of, like, the best episodes of this show to the best episodes of TNG, you have to pick something like The Drumhead, which is just so goddamn good that it doesn't matter.
That's a great one.
But or Measure of a Man, or, you know, basically any episode where Picard gets to make a speech about morals, you know, and the integrity of the
I don't think, I mean, I love the
Federation.
characters, but I don't think there's any that can go toe to toe with Picard. Well,
maybe in Growth they can, because, you know, again, serialized storytelling.
Sure.
But they're different beasts, right? They're different
absolutely.
beasts.
Which is why we're not comparing them.
Well,
apples and oranges.
I kind of did. You know, you can prefer apples to oranges if you want. Like,
oranges.
But I don't want to make it sound like I didn't like the end. I did like the ending a lot. Like, it felt special. It felt like it was seeded. Everything. It didn't feel like some weird swerve for the sake of a swerve. It was all the hints and details were there to have it happen. But it wasn't as exciting to me going forward as all the stuff in the future with Londo, G'Kar, Sheridan, and Delenn was.
Well, yeah, we are way more invested in those characters. I mean, Sinclair was great in season 1, but he's been gone for a while.
It's one of these things where, I mean, obviously the circumstances for the actor leaving were really, sad and unfortunate, but it's one of those things where rejigging the show and being forced to, like, come up with other things, even as he realizes this was always planned to be, it might have actually forced it into like a better show, in a weird way. Like, and we can't say that for sure without ever seeing the original vision, and we never will. Even the new reboot, even the new reboot isn't the original vision again. Like, it's just clearly a new take that he's got because he's doing Sheridan to start with. So it's not like we're getting the original Sinclair-led Babylon 5.
Yeah, maybe he likes Sheridan more after being forced to write him into the show.
Yeah,
it's like, wait a second, this is great.
So super interesting stuff. And
I think people like when they have walls that they have to work in between when they have restrictions, like sometimes can come up with the most creative stuff. Yeah,
so sometimes restrictions are a tool to force you to make things work. When you just have every option, because Sinclair, I like Sinclair, but he was a little. I guess I'll put it the other way. Sheridan is a more layered character because I think when he had to come up with a new main character, he had to say, well, I can't just do Sinclair again. He has to have other elements. He has to have. So we got a character who was a little bit more aggressive towards certain other characters. We got a character who had a different attitude that felt a bit more nuanced, whereas Sinclair was a little bit straight hero, if you will. He was a bit too just always the good guy, and that was fine. He worked in the role, but I think Sheridan, once he settled, not right away, there was a little awkwardness for a few episodes, but once he settled into it, once we got him interacting with more characters, once he got more comfortable with the world and the characters, it really felt like it became a much richer character overall. And I think that's maybe like one of the benefits, and again, I'm not wishing anything that happened on the actor, because that's not what I'm saying here at all. But in the context of writing the show, there's being forced into these positions, I think, almost draws out this creativity where, and you see it sometimes where, the example that's always brought up is Star Wars, where George Lucas, when it came to the prequels, because Star Wars was this huge thing by that point, is like, you can do whatever you want and we'll keep giving you money, and then you get the prequels, and I was thinking, or like the directors who we really love make a movie on Netflix. Sure. Yeah.
And it's just a total mess, garbage film.
And obviously, there's for every story about someone having too much creative freedom, which ruins something because they have no restraint, and some people do have restraint. There's definitely people who can handle that. There's way more stories of like constraint ruining things because people are like, budgets are taken away from them, or because they're told no, you can't do this, or you can't have this risque story, or you can't have this, or you can't have that. So it's definitely a balancing act, and it's definitely not like a one answer fits all by any means, but it is. There's definitely examples, and I think some of this in B5 you can definitely see where, because they can't just have as many great space battles as they want, they have to choose and pick when they can do that, and maybe that spacing of things out helps make them feel more special when they do happen, and stuff like that.
Won't have that problem with the reboot. We'll see.
No, necessarily. So we'll see. But no, I mean, like I said last episode, I was going, oh shit, oh dear, like constantly, because it was hitting us with all these big things, and I think to its credit, part 2 didn't like feel lesser. Like, it actually somehow upped them all. It kept giving me more of them. It was like, you thought it was a big deal seeing Londo in the future? Oh, but wait, he's actually kind of good now, and he wants Sheridan to save the world. Like, it kept adding things that were, they're swerves, but they're not just swerves for swerve's sake either. Like, we have been hoping, it's dwindled maybe a bit, but there's always been this hope that Londo can be good again. So the swerve, like, putting us on that path and giving us a glimmer of hope, feels like, oh no, this doesn't just feel like a swerve for the sake of going, twist. It feels like it's actually enhancing and giving us more reason to care about the character again. And so everything's enriching the characters we have and that we're going to be sticking with. And even G'Kar, like, the fact that
he didn't have a line.
No,
he didn't speak at all.
The fact that G'Kar is in this place where he's still willing to like kill Londo, but maybe G'Kar, because he is so enlightened, is willing to never kill Londo, and he only does it at the end because it is for the right reasons. It is because this is to ensure that we can change things.
I'm sure he enjoyed it a little bit.
Probably a little bit. I mean, it's, you know, I get why he'll still enjoy it a bit, but he's went this long without killing him, which definitely feels like a more, you know, level-headed G'Kar.
And he was just like hanging out there.
Yeah. Like
Londo just like called him in and said, "All right, let's go."
Has he been coming to speak to him every time Londo? Has Londo been getting drunk every so often for G'Kar to come and have secret meetings with him because they're?
I think they had some sort of like, you know, reconciliation long before this.
Yeah, and there is kind of this idea that, you know, like this occupation happening to Centauri Prime is this, you know, some people might call it just desserts or like whatever, but the idea that G'Kar's in a place where he will sympathize with that, it doesn't matter that they did it to him.
Yeah, we spoke about that before too.
So yeah, absolute banger of an episode.
Very, very good. Yeah,
that you know, at this point I don't know how much more we can add that would say much about it. If I had to,
still don't like Cole.
who does offer to go back? He's like, no, I'll go back. It's like, no, you're not important enough. You stay here.
Yeah, I like there was a scene with him and Ivanova together, and he looked like a dummy, and I was glad that it didn't lead to a romance.
Sure,
you never know. Two of them are together. The show was kind of teasing it before, but they haven't brought it up in a while, so maybe they know.
Yeah,
that Cole kind of sucks.
I do love Ivanova just sneaking around Babylon 4. The idea that when I go back and rewatch the show and I watch Babylon Squared again, I'm going to be like, oh, Ivanova's like running around the background and we just can't see her. Yeah. In her new uniform and everything. How nice. Mm-hmm. And Cole's there. He's not even introduced yet for that episode.
And Cole's there.
Yeah, Cole's running around. And obviously Sheridan, which is the big one. But
yeah. And the 2001 Space Odyssey suits are back.
Yeah, there's two of them now.
And you never know who's going to be inside.
And that was the thing, they repeated that moment because, you know, we guessed it was Delenn. And obviously they hid her because she went through a transformation. But we assumed this was a Delenn who was from the far future. Like, we also assumed Sinclair was from the far future because of the age. But it turned out, no, this is just Delenn from like season 3 who's going to be there. And I also kind of took, you know, when Sinclair, because he tries to like talk to Garibaldi when they're leaving he on the comms, you know, or you know, future present day Sinclair, not season 1 Sinclair, goes on the comms and tries to talk to Garibaldi as their ships are leaving, and he says, "Watch your back." And I thought he was trying to warn him because in season 1's finale, that's when Garibaldi gets shot in the back. He gets betrayed by, you know, one of his staff, and I was wondering, is that what he's referencing there? He's trying to tell him to.
Yeah, maybe
I'm taking it too literal.
Especially because Garibaldi wakes up from that coma and Sinclair's already gone, and he's really upset about that.
That's true. It
takes him like 3 episodes to get over it.
Yeah, actually, it makes it kind of a shame that he never got to see him again in person, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a shame. Oh well. I'm sure.
Especially since he's, you know, alive. He's just on another planet.
I'm sure Garibaldi's going to be dropping some salty comments about not being able to be involved with
wasn't part of the big episode.
You guys went time traveling without me?
Sorry, if you didn't lose your hair, then maybe we could have made it work. This is just punishment for being more bald.
I still maintain, I don't know if he actually is that much more bald in season 1. But he's obviously.
Yeah, it hasn't been that long.
The bigger,
but his hair is very different.
The more problem is that he's shaved it down, presumably because it is receding. But I don't actually think the hairline itself has changed that much since season 1.
Oh no, I'll have to look closer next episode.
Because if you look at, you know, the season 1 clips in this, like, you know, it's still the same shape. He's still got the, you know, the you know, in the middle but not the sides. Like, he's still there. It's just taller. he's just got.
Yeah, he had like a half a mohawk just in the front, and then regular hair for the rest.
Yeah, so there's a joke in here about, you know, Sinclair says, "Oh, you know, if he came through the time portal again, it would affect Garibaldi too, and I couldn't take that chance." And I'm like, well, yeah, like actual age has already done a number in his hair. Maybe he shouldn't come through the time portal again, given what it's done to yours this time.
Yeah. It's okay.
I can make that
There's
joke.
nothing wrong with being bald.
I've lost more hair than he has. I'm allowed to make these jokes.
Yeah. I just, don't want people to think that there's anything wrong with being bald.
I mean, I used to kind of have that shape, but the hair, the middle part at the top kind of thinned out. I still
Did you also have long hair, though?
I did, yeah.
Did you have long hair when it was in that shape?
Kinda.
Alright.
I hadn't quite realised it yet. I still feel hair in the middle, just for the record. Yeah. It's just really thin and soft, and you can't really see it on camera.
Just baby hair.
Yeah. But hey.
You can see a little bit. There's a shadow.
There's a little, yeah. It feels more than it is, which sounds like I'm being defensive. I really don't care, but
yeah,
it looks what it looks like. Can't change things. All of this has happened before, and all of this will happen again.
I'm glad you don't hide it though. Like that's the worst. When people who are bald just cover it, that's just.
I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I consciously don't put on a hat because I don't want people to think I'm hiding it.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just might wear a hat because my head's cold.
Well, I imagine that does happen, yeah.
Which, by the way, because you know what, there's a portion of people, right? This is getting into a tangent about baldness, but there's a portion of people who think once it's went a certain amount, right? Because obviously the back of my head's still quite, I've got the John Lithgow or whatever you want to call it, right? The ones that's gone a certain amount know that you should just shave it all off, right? There's this attitude just shave. I see not to me, but I see comments. I see comments to other people, based on actors or athletes or whoever. It's like, I should just shave it off. They're fooling themselves having any of it left. And can I just tell everyone from experience that I have tried shaving my entire head twice, and both times I hated it because it was itchy and the back of my head was cold. Me leaving what's there still there is not some weird I'm clinging to what hair is left. It's no, I tried it and I hated how it felt, so I'm not doing it again.
Yeah, who gives a shit what people think?
I just, but there is this belief that once it's a certain point, you just shave it all off.
No, you don't have to go for just got out of prison look.
But which is not to critique Garibaldi or Jerry Doyle, perhaps in the real sense, the choice to shave it down. If you want short hair, you want short hair, but it is what it is. Anyway,
they would be, you and Jerry Doyle would be revered on planet Centauri Prime.
We'd have to get the big wig of the peacock thing, but
well, you still have hair, so you just grow it out.
That's true. I mean, I could grow it and have
a lot of hair gel.
I could have a Bill Bailey if I wanted, but it just looks more homeless than anything else. So. Best not. But yes, there you go. Big episode. Super exciting. I love how we were 5 minutes less than the last episode, and then we went on a 5-minute tangent about hair. So we have now matched the runtime of the previous episode. So both parts are equal. It is whole.
Very nice.
Honestly, with all the talk of the three making the one, and comparing it to that's why I'm embarrassed. Three classes. The worker, the warrior, and the religious caste, and all that stuff. I thought, this is kind of ballsy that he's not done a 3-parter. Why is it not parts 1, 2, and 3 to match the whole theme of threes?
The Trinity.
Yeah, but whatever. Even GMS has his faults. So
that's why he's getting a second chance on CW.
That's true. Maybe it'll be 9 seasons because it'll be 3 seasons of 3, and he'll do lots of 3-parters.
The before, the now, and the future.
Yes, that's the whole plan.
Very nice.
But there you go. That's War Without End Part 2. We'll see you next time for the next one. Let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Ding the bell for notifications. All of those things help out a lot on YouTube. It helps channels grow and capture more audience. So please hit those buttons. But you can also support us financially, can't they, Tara?
That's right, Peter. If you enjoy our reviews, please check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MildFuzzTV. And you can get bonuses for donating as low as $1 per month. And if you donate $5 per month, you will get access to these Babylon 5 reviews 6 days early. So if you want to know what we think of next episode, you can find out tomorrow if you join Patreon. And I don't know what next episode is, but I assume that Sheridan and Delenn are not going to talk about what is obviously going to happen, and they both know it, and we're just going to go play this freaking game again for another season.
Either that, or the episode's going to end with him putting on, "Hey Delenn, there's some music from Earth I want you to hear," and it's some Marvin Gaye. It's some Marvin Gaye, and then the camera
Let's get it out.
just goes down to the candle, and then it fades to black.
Very nice.
All right, there you go. I will also take this time to pimp out our other podcast that you may like. So if you like sci-fi discussions, we have a sci-fi movie podcast, which is weekly, and you can find it over on Mail Fuzz Movies for the YouTube version, or you can actually get the audio feed of that. The Atomic Cinema
Dune.
The Atomic Cinema Experiment is the title of the show, and go check it out. Don't recommend the Dune. Like I'm like really lukewarm on that. Don't recommend that one. That's a bad one for it. We just did the Planet of the Apes Tim Burton remake, and we both hated that. But that's why it's a good review, because it's hilarious. At least I think it's hilarious. Anyway. I
mean, yeah. I guess I hate it. You hated it much more than me.
Yeah, but you didn't think it was good either, though.
No.
If you want to see true hatred, I mean, not science fiction, but I also do a horror movie podcast with Tim called Screams After Midnight. Go check out our 2.5 hour review of Halloween Kills for an in-depth analysis of why that movie is a complete piece of shit. Go and enjoy. Thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Babylon 5. Just Londo gave away the homeworld, and Veer must come in and not give it away.